recording. So I put together this. I know it seems really daunting and it's a huge piece of paper, but basically what it does is it summarizes everything for question 1, paper 1, question 2, question 3, question 4, and question 5 on one sheet. And then on the other sheet, everything for paper 2. Okay, and it even comes at the end, it even gives you an example of the kind of things that you would have to do. So for example, if I go to,
I can't see your.
you can't see the screen. Okay,
No.
maybe I haven't.
No, I can't see too. I can't.
Right, okay. Can you see it now? I don't think I shared it.
Yes, yes.
Yep. So
Yes.
it looks like this. And that's paper 1. And that is paper 2. And it's basically everything I've been trying to teach you. I've tried to get onto one piece of paper as a revision thing. So I don't know, if you're at work, you're on a break, you can just whip out an A4 piece of paper and just have a quick read through it, a quick check through as a reminder, as a recap. So very quickly then, if I just do question 1, worth 4 marks, how to answer, short answers, one word or a short phrase, you know, and you can copy it literally word from word. Question 2, how does a writer use language? You have to do a point, a quote, have a word, the language technique, okay? And it will just give you some examples of the tone you can mention, the mood, an example answer. Let me just, somebody's waiting to join. And then you've got question 4. Okay, you have an opinion on this. Do you agree or do you not agree? And then again, a point, a quote, a language technique. I agree with this statement. And question 5, where it says gap now, but it's kind of what we're doing. You know, you zoom in, zoom out, shift. So you grab the attention of the reader in your first paragraph, you answer the question, you make a key point, you make a new point, a new single line sequence, and repeat the key idea again at the end. So that's there. And then the same for question 2. Paper 2, sorry, and it's all there for you to read through. There might be some things on there that I haven't done because when I put it together, it was for a higher paper, and that's absolutely fine, but it's just as a recap. Don't worry about what you don't know. It's too late to be learning new stuff, but I just want you to really focus on the examples that I've given you. Okay, because the key thing about question 5 on paper 2 is that you should always start off with an anecdote, whether it's an article, whether it's a letter, whether it's an article, a letter, or a speech. You start off with an anecdote. So this one was about prison cells, okay, and prisoners. So you just start off with this anecdote here, and then you go, this is a prison cell, the metal bars, and then you give your facts and your quotes and your opinions and so on. Okay, so I will email that out to everybody today for revision. Okay, so paper 1 feedback very quickly then. I was pleased to see that nearly everybody got the full 4 out of 4 marks on paper question 1, which is brilliant. Okay, I thought this was a bit more wordy than normal question 1s, and for that reason I thought it would catch people out, but it didn't. And this is actually a June 2022 paper. So my class last year did this paper, so it was a real exam. So read again from lines 1 to 6. List 4 things about the brush house and what is happening. So it's either 4 things about the brush house or 4 things about what was happening. Okay, and these are the kind of things that you could have said. You could have said the sun is warm in the house. For 2 marks, you could have said the sun is breaking through the house crevices in long streaks. And if you look at these examples, which you will be able to in your own time, literally these are copied word for word from the text, and you can do that. You know, the bed box is hanging, that's 1 mark. But if you said the bed box is hanging from the ceiling, that's 2 marks. There is a hanging bed box, 2 marks. 4 marks was there is a tiny movement near the hanging box, 4 marks. There is a scorpion in the room, 1 mark. The scorpion is moving slowly, 2 marks. So it might have been that you listed 4 things, but you got one of those wrong, but you still got 4 marks because one of your other answers was worth 2 marks. Okay, so any of these counted. What they would not allow, what they did not want, was that the baby moved in a tiny movement, because it doesn't say the baby moved, it just says there is a tiny movement near the hanging box, and the tiny movement comes from the scorpion. And it said, and you can't accept Kino and Juana are freezing, because it says Kino and Juana froze in their position. Okay, you can't say they're freezing, because freezing could be interpreted as if they are very, very cold. Okay, and Anything that's not there will still be accepted as long as it tells you something about the brush house, it's the correct section of the text, it's true and accurate, and if there's no subject, you've just written a one-word answer. If I put there is before it, so there is a scorpion, if you just put scorpion in the room, if you put there is a scorpion in the room, does it make sense? And if so, you will get the mark. So most people did well on that, but these were all the potential answers you could have given and the marks that they are worth. Now, question 2 then. Okay, there were some interesting responses to this. How does a writer use language here to describe the conflict between Kino and the scorpion? Okay, and the key word there is conflict. And there is a conflict because the overall point is when you write about language, rather than saying a verb has been used here, blah, 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 an adverb has been used here, blah, 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 a simile has been used here, blah, 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 and a metaphor has been used. What a good grade 5 or above question or answer does is it would give an overall summary. So the writer uses language here to describe a battle between the scorpion and Kino. They are opponents in a fight for survival, and the language shows this. So you give a summary, and then you show me how the language shows this battle, because it's telling you it's a battle already, because it says conflict. They are in conflict. The scorpion is trying to do what it does naturally, which is sting and bite, and Kino is trying to do what comes naturally to him as a father, which is protect his son. So they are almost in this dancing battle, the scorpion to do what it needs to do and Kino to do what it needs to do, he needs to do for his family. So what you could have used, these are some content about the language you could have used, and then this is an example of how to explain the quote. So you could have talked about the extended metaphor. In Kino's head, you can hear the song of evil, and then there's a song of family, and that represents the contrast between good and evil. Evil of the scorpion, family, which is the good, the innocence of his child. You could have mentioned the personification when his breath whistled, suggesting the loudness and autonomy of his breath. Some people said he used onomatopoeic, his breath whistled. That was brilliant. You got a mark for that. As long as you can say the onomatopoeic shows that he's literally scared to breathe and make a sound. The purpose of his breath whistling out, okay, is to suggest his panic and fear, but also his awareness that he needs to keep quiet to not spook the scorpion because the danger it presents. And that's the conflict. Kino's instincts are to grab this scorpion and throw it out. But actually, he has to go against his instinct and use his rational brain, which is, don't spook it because it will attack my child. There were a lot of adverbs and people got these words wrong. So I'm going to send out another worksheet that I sent out at the beginning of the year that's got all the language techniques on it, and adverbs are on there. Now, adverbs tell us how a verb happened. They add information to the verb. So if it's that he moved, so Kino moved, how did he move? Delicately, quietly, noiselessly, smoothly. There were 4 adverbs in this, and all of these adverbs suggest that Kino is exceptionally focused on the scorpion. He's exceptionally focused on not betraying his presence to the scorpion, wanting to get to that scorpion in a stealth mode. And that suggests the conflict between the two. He's trying to get to his opponent before his opponent can strike first. And that's what these adverbs show. They are not words of a battle or a war, but they are adverbs that show the delicacy of his movement. You've got a short, simple sentence here, which is a language technique. Kino stood perfectly still. Again, linking into the adverbs, emphasizing his self-control and exposure, which probably goes against every instinct as his father. He doesn't want to stand perfectly still. He wants to rush and get that scorpion. And then the adjectives like startled indicate the surprise of the initial shock for Kino. And again, the repetition of the word smoothly, which some people did mention, it reinforces his controlled behavior. His very smooth movements, his very conscious behavior. So if you were to use this example of the extended metaphor, the writer creates a contrast between the image of a song of evil and a song of the family by describing the evil threat to Kino's family, represented by the scorpion. Here the writer describes this threat as the music of the enemy and a dangerous melody, suggesting a huge sense of immediate danger surrounding the family. The adjectives are savage, secret, and dangerous in a triple suggests a hidden threat the family faces. The words savages and dangerous emphasize the struggle Kino faces against the evil threatening his family. Okay, savage, secret, dangerous. It's a triple that's describing the scorpion's behavior. It is savage. It moves secretly and it moves in a dangerous way. And it is a huge threat. That's why there's a song of evil. Okay. And that's why that's a dangerous melody. These adjectives all show the immediate danger surrounded by the family. And once Kino has recognized this danger, there's a conflict between Kino and the Scorpion of who can get to his son first, who can strike first. Can Kino get to the Scorpion before the Scorpion gets to his son? And all these language features are used to describe Kino's efforts to get into that Scorpion. Okay. And if we look at the text up to line 17, it's here. I mean, this one line paragraph is on its own and it's completely different. But up until this movement, okay, Kino's hand is still moving slowly, smoothly. And the Scorpion is still very aware and very threatened. Okay. So that's what it wanted you to do. Just remember, when you come to the language question, before you start giving individual words and phrases, give an overall summary. What does the language show? The language shows this war between Kino and the Scorpion, or the language shows that the weather is the enemy. It's battering the boat in the water. And which words and phrases show that the weather is the enemy? Which words and phrases show that Kino is in this battle, a silent battle against the Scorpion for survival? So give an overall summary and then the words that show this and the language techniques that show this. I promise you, if they give you a paragraph asking how the writer uses language, it's going to have language features in it. And sometimes it might not have a simile or a metaphor or personification, but it will have adjectives, it will have adverbs, it will have powerful verbs, it will have, repetition perhaps. There will be lots of things in there that you can draw attention to, and you wouldn't need to write all of them. Okay, you would make one comment like I have here in the yellow, okay, and then maybe pick 2 or 3 of these and really go into detail with them. Any questions about question 2? Okay, I'm going to move on to question 3 then. I really like this question. I'm not a fan of structure. Okay, I think structure can be really, really difficult, but in this text, I think the structure question was lovely. It was quite a straightforward one to do if you were able to pick out that is straightforward. So basically, this structure, we have fancy structures, don't we? We have structures that go in a circular motion. We have structures that are flashbacks. We have structures where the outside is brought inside, which it is here as well. We have structures where outside, inside, circular structure, flashback, flash forwards even, okay? But this structure was in a chronological order. This one was in the time order. It starts off in the beginning with the house. The sun is on the outside, but if you look here, and I think it was Sophie who mentioned this, okay, the sun is coming inside the house in long streaks. So the outside is brought inside through the use of the sun. And the sun is coming in long streaks that fall on the hanging bed box where the baby lies. So the outside is brought inside, and inside we have a beautiful picturesque scene. A brush house, a baby in a box, okay, and the ropes that hold it. And then immediately, okay, we get the development of the build-up, which is this Scorpion. So we got our opening. Then we get our build-up where Kino is trying to get the Scorpion is trying to get the baby. Okay, not get the baby, it's just doing what's natural. Then we have got our opening, our build-up, which is in quite, like emotive language there. Then we get our climax, which is where the baby laughed. The laughing baby shook the rope and the Scorpion fell. That is the key part of the climax. We're all holding our breath, and this is also part of our climax. Kino's hand leapt to catch it, but it fell past his fingers onto the baby's shoulder and struck. All that happens within one long sentence, okay? So that's your climax, and then this is your come down from that. This is your resolution. How does Kino resolve the problem? Well, he gets this Scorpion and he overkills it, okay? He stamps on it. His teeth are bared. He's got fury in his eyes. The song of the enemy is roaring in his ears because this is still his enemy. The crying screams of his baby is flaming his anger. Probably all his instincts that he's been holding together and really forcing himself to be quiet and careful. Actually, he's just fallen apart now. Okay, and he beat and stamped the enemy until it was just a fragment and moist. So there's not even anything left of the Scorpion. It's just, flattened into the ground now. Okay, so that's your resolution there of how the problem is solved. The Scorpion is dead. He's killed it, but the baby is injured as well. And then you get your conclusion here, which is on a cliffhanger. We don't know what happens. Okay, they take the baby to the doctors. She goes first, and then Kino follows her out. Kino followed her. So it's almost like now Juana is taking control. She's stepped up to the role. And also, you can talk about structure, that there's a real contrast here, because while he is killing the scorpion and his rage is out of control, her instincts are her baby. And these two things are going on at the same time. He's stamping on this scorpion, she's sucking the poison out of the baby's puncture. Okay, and that they are happening simultaneously at the same time. Okay, and then you can also talk about, if you had time and you talked about the structure, you could also talk about a reversal of roles. Kino is the typical father figure, to protect the family, but Juana is the typical mother figure. Her instincts are to save her baby and her baby's life and to comfort her baby. And her actions are all geared towards that. Once Kino has killed the scorpion, he doesn't know what to do. He's hovering. He's helpless. He's done the aggressive male thing, and now he doesn't know what to do. The emotional part of it. What can I do to calm my baby? And she takes control here. And you could also talk about the reversal of roles, where as the text was focused on Kino and his actions. Suddenly now the text is focused on Juana. The tide has shifted a little bit. Okay. But again, it would depend on how much time you had. So it would just literally be enough to say it's a chronological order, and that creates interest. There's a climax in the one sentence paragraph. The resolution is a cliffhanger. We don't know what happens next. Okay. And these are some of the things you could have said. The opening, a happy, calm beginning, and that really emphasizes the evil that enters the house from outside. Okay, the pace change, it starts relaxed with the baby in the hanging box, but builds fast pace to tension and intensity as the scorpion moves down the rope. The focus shifts between Kino's reaction at the beginning and Juana as a leader in the second half of the text. There is a shift between their roles. Even the introduction to the problem, the scorpion stinging the baby in the middle of the text, is symbolic of the intrusion of evil into the family. Okay, starts off calm, you've got the enemy in the middle, it ends we don't know how. Zooming in on the details, the vivid description, the imagery of the scorpion, the imagery of Kino really attacking the scorpion till there's nothing left of it, and even Juana sucking out the poison. The dialogue, you could have mentioned, that is a structural feature. It shows the interaction between the parents. If I show you the text again, okay, she says, the doctor, go get the doctor. And he's like, the doctor won't come. And then she comes up with another idea, then we will go to him. And that dialogue, she's the one who makes a suggestion about the doctor. She's the one that, ups and leaves and says, we'll go to him then. And it's Kino who's following her lead now. Okay, so there was even that dialogue and the cliffhanger, leaving the reader with questions and feeling concerned about the baby. Does he survive? What happens? Okay, so of course you wouldn't get time to say all of that, but what you could say is, the writer structured the text to interest you as a reader by using a chronological order, and as the text shift from one point to another, you can really see a narrative structure, with the climax being at the peak point where the baby is stung by the scorpion. There is then a perspective shift between Kino and Juana's roles, and so on. Okay, so here's an example, and in the blue it's the analysis of structure. The writer begins the text by introducing the setting by describing the family home lit by sunlight. This is followed by a shift of perspective by bringing the sun from the outside to the inside of the house, creating a sense of calm. However, when the writer then introduces a scorpion, it creates tension, and the reader wonders what might be in store for Kino's family. Now the calmness changes to panic. The scorpion stings the baby, after which the pace of the action increases, showing how fast Kino and Juana act to save their baby, and the speed of their reaction highlights their fear and also creates fear in us as a reader, because we are with them every step of the way. Any questions about structure?
Raksana, at the end of the text, it does say that the baby was okay. I mean, in terms that baby was not, it was just moaning. So did it create a suspense? Because we knew that baby is okay now, obviously.
Okay,
That's
so
why.
right, but it says here an adult might be very ill from the sting, but a baby could easily die from the poison. First would come swelling and fever and tightened throat, and then cramps in the stomach, and then the baby might die if enough of the poison had gone in. So they still don't know if the baby might die if enough of the poison had gone in, because the stinging pain of the bite was going away, but they still don't know if enough of the poison had gone in or not.
Okay, yeah.
And that, so the screams turned into moans, but it doesn't mean that
Mm.
he's okay. Okay, he could
Mm.
still easily die from the poison, and that's reiterated twice. Die from the poison, die if enough of the poison had gone in. And although screams have subsided because the stinging pain is gone, whether he dies from that poison or not is the cliffhanger. Otherwise, they wouldn't be going to a doctor. Okay,
Okay, yeah. Thank you.
no problem. Any questions like that, please do ask. Okay, that's what I'm here for. So, question 4 then. Okay, 20 marks, and it's really difficult in the exam when you have only an hour. But I can't say this enough to you. So many of you, a few people got 13 out of 20, but so many of you could have got so much more than even 10 out of 20 if you'd given yourself enough time. Let's be honest. Getting 8 out of 8 for question 2 is going to be near impossible because it's asking for a perfect answer, a grade 9 answer. You only need to get 5 or 4. Okay, so why waste 15, 20 minutes on question 2 when the maximum grade you can get is maximum mark you can get is 8? And the same for question 3. Why dedicate so much time to it when the maximum mark you can get is 8? This is still 2 and 3 are still only worth 16 marks altogether. This on its own is worth 20. And it's much easier to get 20 marks or 10 marks or 15 marks in this question than it is for these, because these questions are looking for something particular, something precise. This is looking for an overall. And actually, I like these questions because question 4 is asking for your opinion, for your perspective, from your point of view and the evidence. So, for example, a student said in this part of the story, Juana's reaction to the danger facing their baby is different to Kino's. The writer shows that Kino is unhelpful and it is Juana who tries to save the baby's life. To what extent do you agree? So I've always said generally they want you to agree, but actually in this situation, they want you to do a bit of both. Okay, because the truth is that Kino, from line 19 to the end, okay, so if we show you line 19 to the end, from this part here where the scorpion comes in, Kino is very, very, um, um, he's very, very, not active, but he's very, very helpful. He's very, I can't even think of the word now. He's necessary, he's important, he does try and prevent the scorpion from attacking his son. Okay, so I wouldn't say he's unhelpful. It's not as if he saw the scorpion and as soon as he saw it he turned to stone and he couldn't move, because sometimes in panic people can freeze. The fear can freeze them. The fear for his son could have frozen him, and he didn't. He went straight into father protective mode to save his son. So from this part here, he is not unhelpful, but the question is not asking here, it's asking from this part, line 19 onwards, okay, that he is unhelpful. And actually, how much of that do you agree that Juana is the one who saves the baby's life and Kino is unhelpful? And it's okay to say, I agree with this statement partly, but I also disagree with it. And as long as you don't spend too much time before line 19, it's okay to say, before line 19, Kino took an active part in trying to protect his son from attacking the scorpion. And actually, once the scorpion fell into the baby and had struck the baby, Kino then kills it. That is not unhelpful. By killing the scorpion, he's stopping it from stinging the baby again, which would surely mean death, because then it means the baby's got double poison, but also from stinging him or his wife. So although his actions are inspired by rage caused by the scorpion sting to his innocent baby, his actions are also helpful in terms of ensuring that that scorpion doesn't strike anyone else. So I wouldn't say he was unhelpful. However, when it comes to the baby, he does feel helpless because it says Kino hovered, he was helpless, he was in the way. And this triple adjectives to describe how he's feeling really emphasize that it's now Juana who is in charge. And actually from this point onwards, it's okay to say that he appears to be more unhelpful here. Okay, once he's done his protective fatherly role and protect and kill that scorpion, it's Juana who takes charge. She had the babies, she found the puncture, and she was sucking out the poison and spitting it out time and time again. And that's actually happening while Keanu is killing the scorpion. So instead of rushing to the baby, getting the baby and doing that with the poison himself, his instinct is to kill the scorpion. Her instinct is to protect her baby. Okay. And this bit here also shows Juana is more helpful. She's more focused because she's described as an iron. She's got an iron will in her. She's patient, she's fragile, she's obedient, respectful, cheerful, and patient, but there's iron within her as well. She's strong, and she's almost more stronger than him because she could stand fatigue, which is tiredness, and she could stand hunger better than he could himself. So in many ways, she's a much stronger person. And what he does is he shows she's got a range of personalities within her. She's got a range of strength. She's a good wife because she's obedient, respectful, cheerful, patient, and fragile. All the characteristics of a woman, but equally she's got iron within her and she can stand fatigue and hunger. She was like a strong man. You can mention that simile. Okay, so yes, she is the stronger of the two at this point, and she instigates the dialogue. Okay, and when he kind of shuts that down, the doctor would not come. Okay, she doesn't care. She looked at him, her eyes as cold as the eyes of a lioness. You could talk about this. Okay, this simile there, comparing her eyes to that of a lioness, being fierce, no longer fragile. Okay, and you know, that baby was her world, her determination, and that's why she's got this iron will. She's got the eyes of a lioness, and then she instigates the action. We'll go to him. Okay, and she arranges the shawl over her shoulder. She makes a sling. She holds a moaning baby. Okay, and Kino followed her. So in this part of the story, is he helpless? Is he unhelpful? Sorry, he's not exactly helpful. Okay. Initially, yes, he was helpful, but in this part of the story, it is fair to say that it's she that saves the baby's life. She's instigating all the action. Okay, and I'll show you an example here. The writer presents both parents reacting equally quickly to the threat to their baby, and therefore I disagree that Kino is unhelpful. Just like we said, each parent makes a different but equally important contribution. Kino removes the threat of the scorpion forever, and Juana does all she can to save her child. The writer uses animal imagery to describe Kino's movements, like bared, fury flamed, snarling, describing Kino's reaction to the threat that as that of a wild animal. Juana, on the other hand, is compared to a lioness. Okay, so you've also got the animal imagery. Her eyes are as cold as the eyes of a lioness, emphasizing her control, taking charge of the situation. We know that in a pride, okay, a lion might be the male, but it's the lionesses who go hunting. It's the lionesses who are the fighters. It's the lionesses who the lion wouldn't survive without their protection. So we imagine Juana as cool and collected as a lioness before she pounces into action, suggesting she will not stop until their baby is helped. It's not good enough that the doctor won't come. She'll go to him. Even though they prioritize different things, both Kino and Juana show a natural instinct to save their baby. Okay, and they do. It's just her instinct is different. Okay, and again, here's all those things I've just talked about. The contrast between Kino and Juana's reaction, his to kill the scorpion, hers to protect her baby. Juana as having iron in her strength, her determination, which amazed Kino. You know, the fact that she's obedient, respectful, cheerful, and patient. It just shows her multifaceted character. The final line where he followed her, the simple sentence suggesting Juana is leading and Kino is trusting her decisions without question. The fact that he even says that Kino felt helpless, he hovered. But Kino does help because he successfully kills a scorpion. Okay, Juana's persistence and determination to get the poison out of her baby, the repetition that she sucked hard and spat and sucked again, the alliteration there. Okay, and the conversation between Kino and Juana, which is instigated by her. Go get the doctor. She's given him an imperative and a demand. Go and do it. Okay. I think question 4s are lovely questions. Just give yourself enough to do, enough time to answer them. What do you think? Do you agree with this statement? Why? Where is your evidence? Okay, where is the quotes that show that? Do you disagree with it? Why? Do you do a bit of both? How? Okay, I like these answers. I thought these were some of the strongest answers I've ever seen at this part of an exam for paper 1. The only thing was people didn't get to finish them because you didn't have enough time. Okay, and it was it was a little bit painful for me to mark because I could see people getting 13s, 14s, 15s if they had finished. Okay, but you can only get 16 out of question 2 and 3, and you probably spent 30 minutes on those two combined, whereas you probably only gave yourself 10 minutes for this one. and it's worth so much more. I've had people in the past say to me, would you recommend starting with question 4 first then, so we can give it the time it deserves before question 2 and question 3? I would 100% advise you not to do that. I do not think it is the right thing to do, because by the time you've answered question 2 and question 3, you know the text really, really well enough to answer question 4. If you start with question 4, you've only read it once or twice, and it's harder to answer this question. Don't forget, for question 4, you can use things from question 2 and things from question 3. You can copy out chunks as long as they fit into your question, okay, into your answer, as long as you phrase them correctly. But I would never advise starting with question 4, because you might give yourself the 20 minutes writing time, but you won't have given yourself the time it takes to understand the text that you get in question 2 and 3. Okay, any questions on that before I move on?
Yeah, I have one. So like,
Yeah.
it says here, obviously go from the line 19.
Yes.
Obviously, I didn't really use anything before that. That's how I
That's
answered
fine.
my question.
That's what you do.
Yes. So, but you can like tie in the rest of it into that though.
You can, as long as you don't focus too much on there. So if it's basically in this answer, it's done the same as you. Okay, they haven't mentioned anything before line 19, because they talk about each parent making a different but important contribution. Kino removes the threat of the scorpion, and that's what he's doing here. Okay, he kills it here. It doesn't actually mention that he tried to catch it before then. So you could say, because the question is only, he is unhelpful from this line onwards. And the answer is no, he's not, because he kills the scorpion. He protects his wife and he protects his son from another bite. You wouldn't necessarily have to mention anything from above. You could, but you'd only give it like a one-line mention. Okay.
Right. Okay.
Because the question is literally from this line onwards. So no, he's not unhelpful. He killed a scorpion, but actually after that, he is kind of useless, and he admits it himself. He hovered, he was helpless, he was in the way. He doesn't know what to do with himself. So yeah, just focus on the lines they give you.
Yeah, that's
But
fine.
Raksana, in this text, it doesn't really say that. I mean, from my perspective, he was just like literally watching everything. Obviously, Joanna was doing everything, so he could have like not interrupted in between. But he was thinking really positive about his wife. So I mentioned that as well. That okay, he was sort of supportive. He was witnessing that that she's doing everything. And
He was very supportive, because when she says, let's go to the doctor, he just does it, doesn't he? So he is very supportive. As long as you can justify what you are saying, okay, and apply it to the question, because the question is specifically about, okay, Juana tries to save the baby's life. He's unhelpful in saving the baby's life. Do you agree to that? Okay, so you could argue correctly that although he feels helpless and he's hovering, by supporting his wife, he's giving her the strength to have that iron will and the eyes, comparing her to a lioness. She's got all those qualities because he's there supporting her. He's following her without question. He's giving her, what she needs and their baby without, coming up with an alternative or justifying it or saying, let's just see how it goes tomorrow. So yeah, you are within your rights to say that as well. Yes.
Okay, thank you.
No problem. So descriptive and narrative then. Okay, some nice movement in descriptions. I saw some lovely, lovely descriptions, and I really feel like the lessons are making quite an impact on people, because some of the descriptions I had somebody who mentioned the sun coming from outside, the sun coming through a door onto a table. Then the description moved from the sun to what the contents of the table. Then it moved on from the contents of the table to the decorations of the wall. Then it moved on to the window that was right next to the wall. And there was just some lovely movement. Okay. The other thing is, though, the other problem I have. So the sun was coming in through a door, reflecting on a table, then it focused on the table, moves to the windows, from the windows to the chair, and it was just lovely movement. But some descriptions are reading more like persuasive adverts, trying to sell a picturesque idea. So it's almost like, you're trying to describe a house, but you're trying to persuade somebody to go ahead and buy it. That's not what we're here to do, okay? We are here to describe it using the senses. What does it look like? What does it smell like? What can you touch? What can you taste? Can you hear? What similes can you use? Can you imagine it in your mind? By saying it's the most amazing place you'll ever see in your life, it's not enough. Why is it amazing? What can you see that's amazing? What can you hear that's amazing? Maybe you can't hear anything and the silence is amazing. But if I have put on your work that it reads like a persuasive advert and not a description, my advice to you is do the narrative next time, because you're not getting the descriptions right. And if you're not getting them right in the practices, it's not going to come suddenly. So focus on a narrative, because a narrative, if your description is 100% wrong in terms of that it's like a persuasive advert, with a narrative you only need to do a little bit of describing. You've also can have some dialogue, you can have some movement which is more engaging. So in that case, a narrative might be your best bet, rather than keep trying to flog a dead horse and doing the descriptions, because the truth is sometimes we don't get it, and we won't get it, and that's okay. That's why we've got an alternative question in the narrative as well. Okay, so moving on then. Okay, these are 2 extracts, and I'm just really conscious of the time because I haven't given myself enough time now to go through this paper before the mock next week. The extract then that we were looking at is this, okay, and it is from, I can't remember what year this exam was from. I want to say 2021, but I'm not sure. Okay, so in paper 2 then, we get 2 extracts, and these have been emailed out to you, and I'm just going to show you very, very quickly. The nice thing about paper 1 is always fiction text. It's always made up. It's always a story. Okay, like this story that we've just read about the fisherman Santiago and his friend, which was the other one that we did a little while ago. I can't remember. So they are always stories, and there's just one text, so you can really get to grips with it. This paper is harder because there's 2 texts, and they are non-fiction, so they are real. So this is called Unreliable Memoirs. It's an extract from an autobiography. So Clive James has written about his life, his childhood. Okay, and that's what the first extract is. It's a truthful account from his point of view of his childhood. And then source B is also, so that's the 20th century. This is the 19th century. Okay, remember they change and past. And this is a extract from a magazine article. Okay, so this is a real piece of writing that comes from an article, and you are going to have to compare an autobiography, which is a personal account, to a magazine article. Okay, now the key thing to remember here about paper 2 is the topic is always going to be the same. They will have something in common, and in this extract the common thing is children and sweets, but actually the message is going to be different. They will always have a different moral message or a different moral tone. Okay, the other thing then is, remember that question 1 and question 3 are usually on the first extract. Okay, check, is question 1 will be about source A, check question 3 is about source A. If they are, do these 2 first. Do question 1, do question 3. Keep an eye on the time, but do 1 and 3 while that extract is fresh in your head. Do these 2 first. Question 2 and 4 are both on comparing the first and second extract. They are both on comparing, so it makes sense to do these together. Do question 2, which is a quick comparison, and then do question 4, which is a more detailed, in-depth comparison. Okay, while the 2 extracts are in your head, rather than doing question 1 on one source, then reading question 2 and doing that on both sources, then doing question 3, which is on one source and having to read that source again, and then doing question 4, which is on both sources again. It will be really confusing. So if question 1 and 3 are both on the first extract, and they 99% of the time they have never ever been on different extracts. Okay, but now that I've said it to you, this year they might be, so I'm just warning you to keep an eye on it because I don't know what the examiner will do. But if they are, question 1 and 3 are on extract 1, do these first. Okay, so let's read our autobiography by Clive James about his childhood in 1980, which is our 20th century. And then an extract from a magazine article published in 1868. Okay, so this is an extract from Clive James's autobiography, a childhood account. Here he writes about going to the cinema as a child in Australia in the 1940s. Okay, so he was a child in Australia in 1940s. Always read this information in the box. It will give you a good clue as to what's going on. Okay, so it's his perspective, it's his point of view. These are his memories. Every Saturday afternoon at the Pictures, there was a feature film, 16 cartoons and an episode each from 4 different serials. The programmes just went on and on and on. The Margaret Street children would meet up with the Irene Street children, and the combined mass would add add themselves to the Sunbeam Avenue children, and they would join the swarm of children from the other areas, all moving north along Rocky Point Road towards Rockdale, where the cinema stood. So basically, this first paragraph is just talking about a Sunday afternoon where all the children from different streets would come together, and they'd all kind of move in a big gang, huge. So they've come from Margaret Street, Irene Street, Sunbeam Avenue. They'd all join together from all the other areas, and they'd move to Rocky Point Road because that's where the Odeon Cinema stood, okay, towards Rockdale. In summer, the concrete footpaths were hot. The tarmac footpaths were even hotter. Bubbles of tar formed to be squashed flat by our leathery bare feet. So it was so hot, the tar was bubbling in the roads. Okay, they had no shoes. They were walking bare feet. Their feet were leathery. Remember, it's in the 1940s, no shoes. Running around on gravel playgrounds throughout the spring, by summer, we had feet that could tread on a drawing pin and hardly feel it. So by the summertime, our feet were so hardened, you know, we couldn't feel anything. So it was fine just to walk on them. And remember, this is just his memory. Can you see the description of the senses, what he can feel, what his memories are entrenched in his senses? When you got to the cinema, and that's interesting because there's no I in there. There's a we in there, okay? And there's a you in there. But no I. When you got to the cinema, the first thing you did was stock up with lollies. Lollies was the Australian word for what the English call sweets and the Americans call candy. So they're not lollies like we think, lollipops, okay? They're sweets basically, or candy that Americans call. Some of the more privileged children, so the wealthy children, had upwards of 5 shillings each to dispose of. But in fact, 2 shillings was enough to buy you as much as you could eat. And you can tell from the money as well, the shillings, it's a different time. Everyone, without exception, bought at least one Hoadley's violet crumble bar. It was a slab of dense, dry honeycomb coated with chocolate. So fragile was the honeycomb that it would shatter when bitten, scattering bright yellow shrapnel. It was like trying to eat a china vase. The honeycomb would go soft only after a day's exposure to direct sunlight. So it was so hard that you'd have to leave it in the sun for a whole day. The sun that melts the tar on the roads, it would take a whole day for that sun to melt this honeycomb, which was so hard. It was like shrapnel. Shrapnel, if you imagine when a bomb goes off, for example, and metal and things fly everywhere, and those pieces that injure people, that's what it was. It was yellow, bright shrapnel. It was trying to eat china vase. It was that hard, and it would only melt and go soft after a day's exposure to sunlight. The chocolate surrounding it would liquefy after only 10 minutes in the cinema. So the outside was edible, but the inside was rock hard. Fantails, that's another description of a sweet now. Fantails came in weird blue packet shaped. Sorry, I can't read today. Fantails came in a weird blue packet shaped like an isosceles triangle with one corner missing. Each individual fantail was wrapped in a piece of paper detailing a film star's biography, hence the pun, Fantails. So basically it was called a fantail because the paper it was wrapped in, it would give you a film star's information. So whoever was a film star in the 1940s, whoever was popular at that time, it'd give you a little bit of information about them. And that's where the name come from, because they were fans of these famous people, and it told you a little tale about them. But it's a play on word because this is spelled T-A-I-L, like a horse's tail, and this is a tale as in a story. Hence the pun, fantails. The fantail itself was a chocolate-coated toffee so glutinous that it could induce lockjaw in a donkey. People had to have their mouths chipped open with a cold chisel. One packet of fantails would last an average human being forever, but a group of 6 small boys could go through a packet during the course of a single afternoon at the pictures. But it took hard work and involved a lot of strangled crying in the dark. It took hard work and strangled crying because obviously you struggled to open your mouth because they were so hard. It would give a donkey lock a donkey's jaw. Any fillings you had in your second teeth would be removed instantly, while children who still had any first teeth left didn't keep them for long. So this is all a description about the fantail, and this is what question 3 is about, the language question. The star lolly, so the star sweet, outstripping even the violent crumble bar and the fantail in popularity, was undoubtedly the Jaffa. A packet of Jaffas was loaded like a cluster bomb with about 50 globular lollies the size of ordinary marbles. The Jaffa had a dark chocolate core and a brittly orange candy coat. In cross-section, it looked like the planet Earth. It presented two alternative ways of being eaten, each with its own allure, each with its own advantages. You could fondle the Jaffa on the tongue until your saliva ate its way through the casing, whereupon the taste of the chocolate would invade your mouth with a sublime, majestic inevitability. That's one way to eat it, by keeping it in your mouth and letting your spit dissolve it. Or you could bite straight through and submit the interior of your head to a stunning explosion of flavour. Sucking and biting your way through 40 or so Jaffas while Jungle Jim wrestled the crocodiles on screen, you nearly always had a few left over after the stomach could take no more. The spare Jaffas made ideal ammunition. Flying through the dark, they would bounce off a child's skull with the noise of bullets hitting a bell. So basically, once you ate all you could have with 2 shillings, they still had enough sweets that you couldn't eat, and then they would use them to, throw them at other kids in the cinema. With the noise of bullets hitting a bell. It's quite interesting. There's a lot of fighting vocabulary here, like wartime vocabulary, bullets, ammunition, invading. You've got the shrapnel imagery, cold chisel, things like that. There's a lot of warlike imagery. Where was I? Everyone either ate steadily or raced up and down the aisles or to and from the toilet, or all three. The uproar, so the noise was continuous like Niagara Falls. It was never ending. The children were full of beans. Obviously, the sweets made them more hyperactive. And meanwhile, the film was reeling in front of us. Okay, so here he's describing his childhood. Okay, I'm not going to read section B yet. I'm only reading section A because question 1 is on source A and question 3 is on source A. And because we've read it, we're going to do those first. Then we're going to do question 2, which is on both the sources. And then we're going to do question 4, which is also on both the sources. And it just makes sense to organize them that way. So here I have got 4 statements. Okay, I did send this out to you in a piece of paper as well. So if you've got that in front of you, great. And all you have to do, I say all, and it's not that easy, I know. There are 8 statements here. You have to choose the ones that are true. And what you have to do is you have to shade the circles of the ones you think are true. So you just shade them in, not tick them, not cross them, shade them. A maximum of 4. If you do 5, so for example, you do 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, okay, even if this one is right, the examiner will only accept your first 4 answers, so the first 4. So please make sure that you don't tick more than 5. If you make an error, so you've circled this one, you've come to the end and realized, oh, it was this one, not that one, put a big cross through it. Cross out the whole box. That's why we tell you not to tick or cross the box. Shade it in and cross out the one that's wrong. But if you then change your mind and think, oh no, I thought it was A at first, then I thought it was H, but actually it is A. If you change your mind and require the statement that has been crossed out, then draw a circle around it. So it's shaded, it's got a cross, but ultimately it's got a circle as well. Okay, and that's how the examiner will then choose that one. Okay, but my advice to you is just double check first which ones you shade. I'm just going to give you a few minutes, 4 minutes, and I want you to tell me which 4 are correct. A, B, C, D, E, F, G, or H. Okay, the cinema program was every Saturday morning. The cinema program was short. The children all came from the same street. The children formed a large group as they moved through the streets. The Odeon was in Rockdale. The children wore shoes. The children went to the cinema on foot. The children had really tough feet. Which 4 are correct from that? And you've got your inserts as well. 4 minutes. That's how long you should have on this, no more. tissue. I'll be back in a sec. So what are we thinking then? Which 4 are we thinking are correct?
So should I go, Raksana?
Yeah, that's fine. Yeah.
I think it's D, E, and G and H.
Okay, so D, the children formed a large group as they moved through the streets. E, the Odeon was in Rockdale. G, the children went to the cinema on foot. And H, the children had really tough feet. Anybody got anything different from D, E, G, and H?
I didn't have A.
So she hasn't got A, she's got D, sorry, E, G, and H.
Oh, no, that's it.
That's what you've got as well. Yeah,
Yeah.
brilliant. Yeah, perfect. And it's exactly those. These are false. Okay. D is correct, true. E is true, and G is true, and H is true. Okay. Sometimes, very rarely, they will try and trick you. They'll give you part of the sentence that's true, and you read the opening and you think, yeah, that's right. And the second half of it won't be. Okay. A bit like this one. The cinema program was every Saturday morning instead of being, because you look at the program was every Saturday and you think that's true, and it's afternoon, not morning. So just be aware of that. But nice, easy 4 marks straight away there. Okay. Question 3 then is a language question, and it will tell you need to refer only to source A. Check straight away when you start your exam if question 1 and question 3 are both on source A, and if they are, do them together. Okay, but it's lines 20 to 28, and if you look at that, lines 20 to 28, okay, it's this bit about the fantail. Not the peak of the description, which is about the star lolly, the star sweet, which is the Jaffa, and it's got like 3 paragraphs describing the Jaffa. No, what they want to talk about is the fantail, okay, 20 to 28, and you only focus on those lines, okay? Now, the instinct is you're in the exam, you've not got much time. This is worth a good 12 marks, not 8 like paper 1, but it wants you to do exactly the same as paper 1. Okay, the instinct is to look at them and look at the words weird, blue packet shaped like an isosceles triangle with 1 corner missing. Right, that's my first quote. I have got adjectives weird and blue. I've got the fact that it's shaped like an isosceles triangle. Okay, what are you going to say about it? What's your explanation going to be? What does that show? How does a writer use language to describe eating fantail sweets? You're not describing eating fantail sweets. You're describing the packaging that the fantail sweets come in. And unless you can say, give an explanation for it, that's a waste of your time. So your instinct might be to rush in and look at the first thing you spot. Actually read it again. Okay. Each individual fantail was wrapped in a piece of paper detailing a film star's biography. Hence the pun, the play on words, fantails. So you could talk about the fact that the name of the fantail came from a play on words. There's a lot to say. They were tales about film stars at the time that people were fans of, and it was put together to make a word fantail. Okay, the fact that it's in a isosceles triangle means nothing. Or you could talk about the fact that it was so glutinous that it could induce lockjaw in a donkey. Now, if you think of a donkey and you think of donkey teeth, they are quite strong, they are big. Okay, and what it's saying is the toffee is so toffee-like. Okay, even a donkey would struggle to chew. Okay, they would get lockjaw, their jaw would become locked in position. Okay, so how does that describe the fantail sweets? It uses exaggeration to describe how difficult they are to eat, how glutinous, how toffee-like they are. Okay, the alliteration here, chipped open with a cold chisel, as in, you need a chisel and you need to hammer, those teeth to unlock them. Okay, the alliteration there. You could also have the hyperbole, exaggeration. They would last an average human forever. Well, no, they wouldn't. That's exaggeration. But then you've got a contrast of small 6 boys going through a packet in a single afternoon. Okay, so you've got the hyperbole there, the exaggeration there, and then you've got a contrast of, a human forever, 6 boys, 1 afternoon, easy. You've also got the fact that strangled crying in the dark. Now, you could talk about that as a juxtaposition. Strangled crying means if somebody's strangled crying, you would imagine that they are in pain, that they are hurt, that they are upset. And actually, the irony is, the contrast is, this strangled crying is happening from doing something that they really enjoy doing, which is eating fantails. But it's causing so it's like the pain is part of the pleasure, okay, for young people. And fillings and first teeth didn't keep them long, okay. And again, all these techniques, all this, metaphors, the alliteration, the hyperbole, the exaggeration, they are describing fantail sweets as tempting but painful to eat because they are difficult to chew because of the toffee. And that would be your overall statement. Okay. Does anyone have anything else that they would mention or talk about in this section instead?
Roxana, I've got this question.
Yeah.
I mean, when you say about the bun and the fantails, so it doesn't really reflect the eating experience, isn't it? It's just the outlook of the sweet. Should we mention
Exactly.
that?
You could. Yeah, you could. It's just the same as if you mentioned weird blue packet shaped like an isosceles triangle. You would do the same thing. If you did pun the fantails and the shape of it, you could even say that, part of the fun of the fantails or part of the enticement of the fantails was the fact that because it looked weird in a blue shaped isosceles triangle with fantails on it, that was part of the allure. So it wasn't just the fact that it's got toffee in it that makes it hard to eat. It's the packaging that's attractive, and it's the film stars' biographies and details that are attractive.
And could it be that because isosceles triangle, it has got a certain shape, like for example, it's more easy, it's not like a very big candy sort of, and with one corner missing, could it be that it might be like easier to eat? I mean, easily eaten, something like that.
Possibly, or just the fact that it's different and it's unique makes it more enticing to eat. Yeah, you can pick out anything as long as you can justify it. The question is, how does a writer use language to describe eating fantail sweets? Well, all of this describes the eating of them, but this bit describes the allure of them. Any other questions about that?
Yes, please, Raksana, sorry.
Yeah, no problem.
I think my struggle is, I don't know if anyone else has this struggle, but when you get the question, it's like, how does the writer use language? Okay. I always start mine off like, the writer uses, and I feel like I'm repeating the writer throughout what I write.
Okay.
How would you start your opening?
Okay, so you can do it the first time. The writer uses language to describe the fantails as being quite difficult sweets to eat, but they are too tasty to give up or too enjoyable to give up. Okay. Then I would just say, the quote, "Induce lockjaw in a donkey," is a humorous example of the kind of pain the fantail sweet causes.
Okay.
Because humor, isn't it, by using a donkey?
Yeah, of course.
Yeah, the alliteration, chipped open. So I wouldn't even say the writer uses language or the language. I would just start off with the quotes. Humor in "Induced lockjaw in a donkey" shows. The alliteration, "chipped open with a cold chisel," shows. I would keep it really basic.
Perfect. So you don't have to write the writer.
You won't have time. That's how you're losing time. Yeah. So literally mention the technique, mention the quote, spend your time analysing that. How does it describe it in the fantail? Actually, the fantail sounds really painful to eat. It sounds like a horrible sweet to eat, but the boys keep going back to it. Perhaps because it's so difficult. So it's not what you would expect from a sweet as such, but it is what you'd expect from kids who could go through a packet through the course of an afternoon and lose all their fillings and baby teeth.
Yeah. Lovely. Thank you so much. Thank you.
No problem. Any other questions about this before I move on? I know I've kind of rushed. Yeah, sorry.
Sorry about it. Can you explain the last two lines? Any filling you had in second teeth would be removed instantly.
So basically, we all have baby teeth, don't we, when we're born, and they fall out. So this is referring to the second teeth that we've got, so our adult teeth. And when you're eating your fantail sweet, some people have fillings, so they get holes in their teeth, and you go to the dentist and they have to fill them, and it's actually really painful. And what it's saying is the fantail toffee is so hard and so sticky that it would pull out your fillings. You know, when you try to open your mouth, it would pull out. So any fillings you had in your second teeth, your adult teeth, would be removed. They'd fall out. You'd have to get them replaced. And any children who had baby teeth left forget it. They didn't last long. You know,
Okay,
they'd even pull out your baby teeth.
okay, yeah, thank you.
Yeah, no problem. I know I've kind of rushed this because we did language for question paper 1 as well. And it's the same thing. What you do for paper 1, you would do in paper 2. Same thing. Don't be tempted to look at the first technique you see. Look at that technique and say, does it describe eating fantails? Half the problem comes, or the mistakes come, when you don't read the question properly because you're panicking about time. And you're thinking, I've got to write an answer down. Yes, absolutely you do. But you've got to write the right answer. How does language
Roxanne?
used to describe fantails?
How many
Yes.
techniques
with this-
we need to
Oh, I
describe,
was just going
to
to ask that
analyze?
as well.
Yeah, brilliant. So I would still say 4. So in an 8-mark answer for paper 1, I would say 4. Okay. So you give an overview and then 3 or 4 techniques. In this question, which is worth 12 marks, I would give an overview. So the writer uses a language to describe fantail sweets as being difficult and hard to eat, but irresistible to the boys. Okay. And then I would give 4 different points. I would talk about the humor in the lockjaw in a donkey. I would talk about the alliteration in chipped open with a cold chisel. I would give the hyperbole or the exaggeration of an average human eating it forever, but 6 boys going through it in a day. And then I would use the juxtaposition of strangled crying, which is ironic because they're doing something fun, but it's making them, sounds like it's choking them. And that's it. And I'd move on.
Thank you.
But I wouldn't use flowery language. I wouldn't start off with the writer uses language to describe eating fantails in another way. Another way the writer uses language is, no, forget it. You know, humor is used, da 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 da. Alliteration is used, da 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 da. Hyperbole is used, da da da. And the juxtaposition or the contrast of strangled crying is used to show. And I'd focus my time on the explanation. And here is some examples that you could do. So you could talk about the allure from them for the visual details, like the blue packet with one corner missing, alliteration, chipped open, the assonance, which is the repetition of the C sound, chocolate coated toffee, chipped open with a cold chisel, but that's alliteration as well. The exaggeration, which is also known as hyperbole, the metaphors. People had to have their mouths chipped open, last an average human being forever, involved a lot of strangled crying. Okay, irony, humor, induced lockjaw in a donkey, the juxtaposition of an average human compared to 6 small boys in a single afternoon. Interesting word choices like weird, glutinous, instantly, and the harsh vocabulary, which we already picked out, but you'd have to make sure you kept it to that paragraph, like chipped, chiseled, strangled, lockjaw. Okay, that's quite harsh, powerful. So here's an example of strangled crying. The writer uses exaggeration of strangled crying to create an image of how much physical effort it is to eat the fantail. The adjective strangled to describe the crying suggests that eating involves suffering rather than the usual enjoyment, as the sweet is so sticky and chewy that the effort of chewing it is like being choked and killed. But the children keep going, as they do because they're kids. So can you see the explanation there in the green? You know, the word, the technique is just mentioned there, adjective and strangled, and the technique is just mentioned there and the quote, but actually the rest of the entire paragraph is an explanation of the image it creates and what it suggests. Are we okay with that?
Is it a real paper, Raksana?
Yes, this was a real paper.
Oh gosh.
Yeah, this was a real paper. Yeah. Paper 2 is hard. Yeah, paper 2 is very, very tricky. So question 2 then, going back to question 2, okay, because question 2 and question 4 are on both. You now need to refer to source A and source B for this question. The children at the cinema in source A and the children at the factory in source B have different experiences of childhood. Use details from both to write a summary of what you understand about the different experiences of the children. So how are the children in source A, how is their childhood different to the children in source B? Well, we haven't read source B yet and we're going to, but it's only 8 marks. So it literally needs to be the children in source A are this, whereas in source B they are this. In source A they are like this, whereas in source B they are like this. 4 things, quick, noted, you know, short quotes. You copy the text directly and they would be your evidence and then move on. Okay, 4 differences that you need. So let's read source B. Okay, we know from source A that these children have access to money because even the poor have 2 shillings, which is enough to buy sweets, that they spend all afternoon on a Saturday at the cinema running around like lunatics. They have no adult supervision because they're running around. Okay, nobody's stopping them. They're throwing sweets at each other. We know there's mention of children, but there's a specific mention of 6 small boys. So we're assuming there's more boys perhaps than girls. Is that a fair assumption to make? I mean, what else do we learn about these children? They're having fun. They are unsupervised. You know, the uproar was continuous. So the entire time they're there, which is the entire afternoon, okay, it's like Niagara Falls, constant stream of noise. So let's see then in this magazine article, published in 1868, what the experience for children was like. So this is from a magazine article in 1688. The writer explains how sweets were made and decorated in Victorian England. So can you see the topic is about sweets in both of them, but the message is very different. In this one, it's about how sweets were a massive part of childhood and such a huge enjoyment. Whereas this one shows us the different side of sweets, how they were made and decorated in Victorian England. Okay, and actually question 2 is right at the end here. Okay, but we have to read the whole extract of this article. No headline, but okay. The last thing a child asks is how the sweet it snaps up with such eagerness is made. Yet the manufacturer of these delicacies, or should I say necessities, of the nursery is a thing worth witnessing. So, just to sum up, no child ever asks how was it made. You know, not when they're going to eat it, but whoever makes these delicacies, these treats, or are they necessary? Because children want them, but it's worth witnessing how they are made. Okay, a marvelous change has come across public opinion respecting sugar and sweets of all kinds. Remember, this is in 1868, so way before the kind of sweets we know. A marvelous change has come across public opinion respecting sugar and sweets. They used to be denounced by tender mothers as trash and messes. So mums used to like disallow them. And possibly because they were so denounced, they tasted all the sweeter to the little ones. So because kids weren't allowed them, they wanted them more. Now, we would not wish to make taboo that which delights young taste buds the most. In moderation, there is nothing more wholesome than sugar. It is nourishing and warming because of the large amount of carbon contained in it. So far, all positive about sugar and sweets. Okay. In the past, sweets were not a speciality in England. There were no large factories for their production. All the higher class sweets came from France and Italy. But the introduction of steam into the process has made England the world leader in manufacturing sweets. Now, sweets are made on the largest scale and are much cheaper. The basic style of old is also gone. So what they used to look like years ago is gone. The eye must now be satisfied as well as the tongue, even in the cheapest items. And that's true, isn't it? So they don't, in 1868, they don't look basic anymore. The style has changed because people need to like the look of the sweets as well as the taste. And we've just read an extract where they like these weird blue-shaped isosceles triangles with the tops cut off. So yes, the look is just as important as the taste, as far back as this. Think of a halfpenny worth of sweets done up in a ruby-coloured gelatine packet. Okay, so they're just saying that, you know, a bright red colour is far more enticing. It is true that some of the more showy sweets made in the past were colourful, but it was metallic colour containing the most virulent poison. So virulent, I think there's a key here. Oh no, there isn't. Virulent is like the most dangerous poison. Sometimes they give you a key and I don't know why they haven't. So they're assuming you know the word virulent. So it is true that some of the more showy sweets made in the past were colourful, but it was metallic colour containing the most virulent poison. The famous scientist Dr. Hassel's analysis of this painted confectionery published some years ago exposed the villainous manner in which this vividly coloured confection was made attractive to children by poisonous paint. The brighter the hue, the more deadly the sweet. The brilliant green, for instance, with which the confectionery was adored, contained copper toxins. So basically what it's saying here is, although sweets now need to look good and they taste good and sugar is a good thing, years ago, the paint that was used to color them in these bright colors was poisonous. Okay, it was attractive to kids because of the vivid colors, but the paint was poisonous. The brighter the color, the deadly the sweet. Like the brilliant green that the sweets were colored in contained toxins of copper. Okay, and that was exposed by Dr. Hassel. It is easy to understand the bad name sweets acquired when made up like this, when thus made up. So when made up with bright colours of poisonous paint, it's easy to understand why sweets get a bad name. No doubt many young children were absolutely killed by excessive eating of those artistically poisoned candies. Dr. Hassel has ex- Dr. Hassel has heroically delivered us from this source of danger to our precious children. Nothing but harmless vegetable colours are now used, which, although not as brilliant as the metallic ones, are quite safe. Today, it is wrong to use metallic colour in confectionery. However, it is just possible that some of the old sweets may still be for sale. So, I bid parents beware of any sweets with vivid greens and reds, for they are sure to be poisonous. Okay, so although it's banned now and vegetable colours are used, there might be still some sweets on sale that are metallic in colour. Okay, so it's just warning parents to be careful. Okay, and you can see that the biography we read had you and we in it. This one has got I. I bid parents. Okay, now moving on from the dangers of sweets being made in factories, the dangers of sweets in the past. Now we come to children. Young girls are largely employed in the sweet making trade. So not boys, young girls are largely employed. They are quick and stick well to their work, but they have a sweet tooth and empty stomach, and so help themselves to the sweets pretty freely. As it is impossible to stop petty pilfering, so it's impossible to stop stealing, the workers are given liberty to eat as much as they like, although the employers reduce the already pitiful pay to account for this. So because they can't stop them from stealing, they allow them to eat as much as they want, but they cut their wages because of that, and their wage is already pitiful. Okay. In the factory which I visited, the girls certainly did not look any worse for their unlimited consumption of lollipops, and their rosy faces gave a clear answer to the old charge against the harmful nature of sweets. So saying where I visited, the children looked really healthy. You know, they weren't the worst for wear for the amount of sweets they're eating. They've got rosy faces, and anyone who's talking about harmful nature of sweets, that gives a clear answer. It doesn't. They've got rosy faces. They seem fine. The sweets are made with the utmost speed by these little workwomen, sitting silently hunched over their benches. In one part of the dimly lit factory, I came upon the little artists, squinting as they coloured the small sugar articles under the strict scrutiny of their supervisor. It was all vegetable colour, of course, and quite harmless. There is no great artistic talent required in the colouring tasks that the girls undertake, and it is far too cheaply paid to be very carefully done. But however poor they may be as works of art, the sweets are most wholesome. This, as we have said before, was far from being the case a few years ago, before Dr. Hassel turned detective officer for the good of our little ones. Okay, so going back to the main point of the story, which is how sweets were dangerous in the past and they are not now. But question 2 asks you this. The children at the cinema and the children in the factory have different experiences of childhood. Use details from both to write a summary of what you understand about the different experiences of the children. Now, obviously, you wouldn't draw it out in a table, but just to start us off then, what can we say about the children in Sauce in the cinema? What's their childhood like? And how can we contrast that with the children in Source B? Remember, is asking the different experiences, not just the experiences of the children, okay, the different experiences of the children. So only a contrast. Source A is like this, whereas Source B is like this. Source A is like this, in contrast, Source B is like this. Source B children are like, Source A children are like this, but Source B children are like that. So those contrasting connectives, whereas, in contrast, but despite the children in Source A having this, this, and this. What I want you to do, please, is I want you just to spend 6 minutes, 6 minutes, just doing a quick bullet point of 4 differences that you can find between the children in Source A and their childhood and the girls in Source B and their childhood. And I will leave this up, but literally the girls starts from 28 to line, 40. Is everyone okay with that?
Yes.
Yeah, I just thought I'll put you all to sleep. Okay, so about 5, 6 minutes and then we'll go through the answers. Okay, just a couple more minutes, and then I want to go through differences that you find in childhood experiences. Okay, let's have a little chat then about what you've got. Mehek, you were asking if this was a real paper, and I was saying I'm sure it's from 2021. It is. It says here November 2021. Okay, this was paper 2 from the November. Remember, there's always an exam in June, and then there's a resit in November. For those people who didn't get the grade that 5 that they wanted, they can resit it in November. So this is the second half of that year.
Okay.
So it was a real paper. Yeah, paper 2 is always harder because it's non-fiction, whereas paper 1 is easier because it's just one text. So what have we got then? If I go back to my PowerPoint then, what kind of things am I typing in?
I
Mm,
got
the-
it's
Go on,
oh,
Sophie.
sorry.
Yeah.
I got from source A. Obviously, there's a lot of uproar, so they were very loud. Against source B, they were
So in source B, they were
sitting silently. So there was it was like dead quiet.
lovely. And what does this tell us then? I mean, is it normal for children to sit silently? Because I bloody hell know mine don't.
No.
So loud. So this suggests that they're fun, and this suggests that there is no fun. Yeah, sitting silently and uproar. Brilliant. What else have we got then?
Okay.
Anybody else?
They work. The children in source B, they are working in factory, but
Okay,
in source,
so have you got a quote for that? Is there something about
Yeah.
working? Yeah.
yeah, factory work, employee, yeah, employee in a sweet making trade.
Yeah. So young girls are largely employed in the sweet making trade. Okay.
Yeah.
So
Whereas source A, they were playing, not working.
okay. Playing, not working. And you could use that quote, you know, where they're running around or they're
Yeah.
throwing the little sweets at each other, but you would have
Yeah.
to have a quote.
Yeah.
Okay. So one in source A, the children are loud, they're having fun, they're in uproar. Whereas in source B, they're sitting silently, there's no fun, they're just working. In source A, they're playing, not working. Whereas in source B, they're employed into the sweet making trade. Okay. What else have we got?
Could we said, Margaret Street children join up? Could we use that one as well? Because they join up, not working. I mean,
Yeah, you could, just to show that they're joining up. They're going to, yeah, they're going to the cinema. You could even use the one at the beginning to show they're on the way to the cinema.
Yeah.
Okay. And the cinema played a film every Saturday, sorry, afternoon. Absolutely. Any quote that just supports that they are playing, that they are having, not even playing actually, that they are having, my brain's gone dead. They're having leisure
fun.
time. Yeah,
Yeah,
they're having leisure
leisure,
time.
yeah.
Okay. And somebody else then. So that's 2 differences. Gets harder and harder.
So can I go then?
Yeah, go on then. Mehek.
So in source B, the children or the girls were poor, and in source A, they had at least few shillings to spend. So
Yeah, even the
probably
poor, even the poorest
Exactly.
of them had at least a few shillings. Okay,
yeah.
and then you just explain that. What quote would you use for the girls that are poor? You could use the pitiful pay,
Yeah, and
Or
or they were
empty
starved.
stomach.
Yeah, or
Or
empty
that-
stomachs.
yeah.
Or what were you going to say, Mehek?
Just a moment, it has disappeared. Roxana, waiting.
It's all right, don't worry.
So we can even use young girls are largely employed in the sweet making trade. So obviously they were working. So and they were not really chilling.
No, but the point is about the money. So they've got access to money, and the girls haven't got
So
access to money.
it could be it is impossible to stop petty pilfering. The workers are giving liberty to eat as much as they like.
Yeah. So just keep it short. 2 or 3
Yeah.
word quote. Yeah, absolutely. As
Or
long as you
maybe
can,
already pitiful pay to account.
yeah, that's what I've put down. Pitiful
Yeah.
pay. Yeah. So as long as you can support what you're saying with evidence, a quote, and explain it briefly, like, in source A, the children are in uproar. This suggests they're loud and having fun. Whereas in source B, the children are sitting silently. This suggests there's no fun. In source A, the children are playing, not working, short quote, whereas in source B, the children are working, they're employed in sweet making trade. In source A, the children have access to money, even if they are poor, they have at least a few shillings, whereas in source B, they don't have access to this money, they have a pitiful pay and empty stomachs. One more then. Is there one more that we can have to compare? Or contrast, sorry.
Can I just
Yeah, go on, Oli Sula.
being in source A, being paid to they pay to enjoy, then in source B, being paid to work.
I couldn't hear you then. In source A, they are
being paid. The children in source A pay to have fun, just to
they're paid
enjoy.
to have fun. Who's paying them?
But source B, they're being paid to work.
Okay,
So
so
they-
I mean, a lot of static's coming through, so I can't hear you very well. But I understand what you're saying, that in source A, the children are being paid to have fun, but who's paying them? They might have pocket money, okay,
Exactly.
but I think the point is that they have money, whereas they don't have money. If you were saying they were being paid, that's not completely accurate, because it doesn't say anywhere that they are being paid to have fun.
Okay. No, what I
Yeah.
what I said was that they paid to have fun. They themselves paid to have fun, or maybe
Oh,
their parents.
okay, right,
But
okay.
in source B, they work to be paid, so they are not. They are not.
Fine.
It's just.
Okay, I see what you're saying.
Fun.
Yeah, that does work. They pay to have fun, whereas they are working to be paid. Okay,
Yes.
so they're not there to have fun. Okay, it kind of links to this one, but as long as you've got a quote that shows that they're paying to go into the cinema, something to do with the cinema and watching a film, okay, that's absolutely fine. Any more that people want to share?
Yes, the suite in the source B was almost made by almost the speed, but in source A they were fancy, and I do think they put lots of time to make it, details in a film star and things like that.
Okay, but that's something to do with the sweets and not the experience of childhood. Remember, the focus is on children and their experiences of childhood.
Oh,
Okay,
yes, you're right.
so although that is a contrast, and this is what can happen quite easily. Sorry, can somebody just mute there? Can you? But there's a lot of static coming through. So although there are other things that you would find differences for and contrasts for, you have to remember to stick to the question. The question is on the experiences of children or the experiences of their childhood. Or so there might be similarities and differences with the sweets, similarities and differences with the adults, but that's not about the children. It has to be specifically about the children. I mean, another one could be that in source A, the children were not supervised. Sorry, the static is still going. If oh, it stopped now. I've forgotten what I was going to say now. Sorry, in source A, the children are unsupervised. There's nobody watching them. They're throwing sweets around at each other. They're running around. Whereas in source B, it says very clearly that the girls were under the strict scrutiny of their supervisor. So the girls are watched at every moment, and the children in the cinema are unsupervised. That's another difference. They've got freedom. These girls haven't got freedom.
I think I have one more. I'm not sure if it's going to fit in. In source A, the sweet they were wearing poisonous. but in source B, it was poisonous to the extent that it was affecting children. In the
No, because that was in the past. That was in the past. That's not now. Now they are not poisonous. So that wouldn't be one. Yeah, but good. Ask questions like that. So some of the things that you could say then is the differences in their surroundings. One's at the cinema, one's in a factory, their enjoyment. The girls are clearly not enjoying working. The children are. Level of freedom. Boys can run around. The girls are under strict scrutiny. Their finances, which we said, the boys have, even the poorest ones have few shillings. The girls have pitiful play. Their level of supervision, which also links to their freedom. Their physical experience. The children can, boys in the cinema can run around. The girls are sitting hunched over. Their gender, we've got a mention of 6 small boys here. We've got a mention of girls in the other one. Students may also mention the other children in source B who are been poisoned by toxic sweets in the past, though. Okay, so you'd have to be careful about that one. I don't really like that one at all because I feel like if you wrote that in the exam, you wouldn't get a mark for it. So I don't know why they've got it in the mark scheme. So in source A, the children experience of eating sweets at the cinema is enjoyable as they ate steadily or raced up and down or all three. They seem to be able to eat and move as much as they like, so there is a sense of freedom about their experience as they do not appear to be supervised. This is different to the factory girls whose experience is controlled, so they have to complete so that they complete their work. In source B, the girls are sitting silently. They have no freedom because they are monitored closely. And here's some of the ones that I had. Source A, the children are having an enjoyable experience. They've got the freedom around the cinema to race around. In source B, it's not enjoyable. It's not much of a childhood. They're sitting silently. They have no freedom to move. There's no supervision in source A. The uproar was continuous. They are supervised in source B under the strict scrutiny of a supervisor, watched every second. In source B, the young girls are largely employed in the sweet making trade, and there are girls, whereas in source B, source A, only boys are mentioned. Source A, is what Olusula was saying. They pay to have fun. They're in a cinema. They are in a leisure setting. But source B, they are in a factory setting. In source A, they have money for sweets, and in source B, they have no money. It's their stomachs are empty and it's a pitiful pay. So it literally just be da 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 da. There wouldn't need to be no long explanations as long as you can make the clear contrast between the two, and you focus on the children, not the sweets, not the setting, the experience of the children or their childhood. And the point is, in source A, it sounds like he had a wonderful childhood, full of freedom and sweets and access to money and friends. And in source B, they didn't have much of a childhood. It was a working childhood for a pitiful pay. Okay, so that is our source question 2 done. Question 4 then is again on both sources. You've read them both. You've just done a quick comparison. They're both fresh in your head. Now you're in a good position to answer question 4 as well. And you need to refer to the whole of source A together with the whole of source B. And you're going to compare not the experiences of childhood, but how the writer shows their different attitudes to sweets. So what is the attitude to sweets in this one, in Clive James's autobiography, compared to the attitude to sweets here? So let's have a brief summary then. What is Clive James saying about sweets in his childhood?
There are plenty fancy fancy sweets which they are wrapped differently, and they got different structure, they got different taste and things like that.
Yep. Anyone else?
Whereas in source, the other source is made so quickly, not put much time on it. Sorry, you can.
I think it's more safer in the present than the later.
Okay, so let's not focus on safety or not, because he's a child. He's not going to be thinking about how safe sweets are. They don't even care if their teeth come out or their fillings or anything like that, because they're children. But what is source saying? So let me just remind myself of the question because I've lost it now. What's the attitude to sweets in this source? What is Clive James and all his friends' attitudes to sweets?
I perceive it as idyllic memories, idyllic life for the children, because they enjoy that period, that event of going to cinema and eating sweets.
Good. The experience of childhood is integrated in the sweets, not the cinema, not the freedom, sweets. So the perspective of sweets for him it was a massive part of his childhood. And you know that because in this biography, you have got one, see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 5 full paragraphs out of 7 or 8 that are focused on sweets. So the perspective on sweets, the attitude to sweets in section A is that they were a huge part of his childhood. They were a huge part of the fun he had in his childhood, the childhood experiences he had, the freedom he had, the friendships he had. They were centered around sweets. Okay. What's the attitude to sweets then in source B in this article?
The first impression that we have it was about the poison and
Good.
the doctor that was a detective.
Yeah, the
real
doctor
detective.
and he identified the fact that these were poisonous sweets. So initially, the attitude towards sweets was in the past they have been dangerous. They might still be dangerous. There might still be some sweets out there that are covered, painted quite brightly. Parents beware. So it's like a warning that sweets in the past have been dangerous, and they still could be if you've got the old ones. But the attitude to sweets now is that they are a marvelous change.
Yeah.
That sweets are nourishing and warming because of the large amount of carbon. I mean, that's not the attitude to sweets now. If you have scientists, they would not be saying, yeah, give your children sweets, they're nourishing and warming. Okay. But here in 1868, that was a perspective, okay, of sweets. The other attitude towards sweets is also, what's that, Magda?
And also the tone is different. In the first part, we see many happiness, but in the source B, we see the poverty of the girl,
Good.
the working hard, crunch it on their benches.
Yeah.
Is not something specific to childhood.
Yes,
Yeah. To
absolutely.
add to Magda's,
Yeah.
is they not eating for fun. They eating for, making their, stomach feel.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think the point that you're both making is that source A is quite light-hearted, humorous. The perspective and attitude towards sweet was that it was a fun part of childhood. But in source A, you've got the dangers of sweet, but it's a more serious attitude to sweets, isn't it? Okay, that they were poisonous in the past. The tone is more serious. Even when he's talking about the girls and how they're painting, we can read between the lines and we can see this is quite serious. These girls don't have much of a childhood at all. Okay, they're just quick and stick well to their work. They're sitting silently hunched over in a dimly lit factory, so the lighting isn't good either, squinting as they're continuously colouring. So source A is more light-hearted towards the attitude towards sweets, whereas source B is a bit more serious in tone. Okay, what else can we say? What about the narrative perspective that it's written from? What point of view is this written from? I mean, although it's Clive James's autobiography, what does it not have in it that you would expect from an autobiography?
The person.
Yeah, no I at all.
Yeah.
Yeah, the personal pronoun. It's you, and it's we, and it's plural, like group. You had it in your first teeth. Whereas in here, in this article, there is a first person perspective. I. Okay, there wasn't up until here. He says I would encourage all parents to keep an eye out. And when I visited, the girls did not look any worse for the wear. I came upon the little artists. Okay. And that could be another difference between the children. The girls that here are described as little artists. So there is that difference in narrative perspective. So compare how the writers show, convey just means show the different attitude to sweets. And because it's asking you to compare, you're looking at similarities and differences. So the similarities are that they both talk about sweets. They are both extracts about sweets, but that's all. Source A is a light-hearted, humorous account of how his childhood was affected by sweets. And you've got language techniques, the methods that are used to show this is the alliteration, it's the hyperbole, it's the similes, it's the humor, and it's all entrenched in the fun that they had as a group, not just him individually, that this group of children had. Whereas the attitude in source B is a bit more serious attitude towards sweet. There is more acceptance of sweets. but there is a danger of sweets in the past, and you'd use the vocabulary, the repetition of the virulent poison. But you'd also say the way that the sweets are described now as if they are almost healthy, talking about the hue that the girls had, the rosy hue. It also talks about nourishing and warming. You've got almost a scientific language as well to describe sweets.
Wholesome, what means wholesome? This word.
Wholesome. Right,
Wholesome.
okay. So wholesome means kind of like healthy. If something's wholesome, they've got a wholesome appearance, they've got a healthy, a good looking appearance.
Because
Does
I
that make sense?
noticed, I don't know, I didn't know this word, and I noticed I find it twice.
Right, okay. Yeah. So that's what it means. If something's wholesome, here it is again. However poor they might be as workers' arts, the sweets are most wholesome. So they're most like, you know, they've got everything going for them, basically. Okay. And this, as I said before, was a far cry from being the case a few years ago. Okay. They weren't wholesome then, they were poisonous then. So what is their attitude? How do you know that? Which methods are used? So what methods are used in source A? And we talked about that. We talked about the humour, the lockjaw for donkey and chisel sweets and the jaffas even. You could look at that language, the fact that it's written from you and we, because what he's trying to show is the attitude to sweets. All children shared that attitude to sweets. They all had a collective good time. Whereas source B is a more serious article. It talks about the deadly nature of sweets in the past with the repetition of poisons, and then it gives you a insight into the girls who are making those sweets, describing them as wholesome and healthy, and there's more scientific language used as well. So this is some of the things that you could say. So comparing ideas is in the blue, explaining the methods is in the yellow, and is clear understanding is in the pink of both. So the writer, and this is just one paragraph, just one example of things you could have said. The writer of source A is nostalgic, which means he's looking back in a fond way. That's what nostalgia means. As he recalls the sweets of his childhood cinema trips. Sweets are the most important part of the cinema experience because most of his account is about the sweets and not what he watched. And that's what we said, isn't it? Cinema seems to be the sideline. The most focus is on the sweets. Out of 7 paragraphs, 5 paragraphs are on the sweets. He shows this by describing all the sweets in great detail, building up to what he regards as the star lolly, the Jaffa. By using the adjective star, he makes it clear that it is the main attraction of the sweet eating experience, the biggest name in the show. On the other hand, the writer in source B does not have a nostalgic attitude to past sweets, as in the past they were potentially life-threatening. He describes how these sweets contained the most virulent poison. His choice of the adjective virulent suggests how severe and deadly the effects of this poison may have been on children. He clearly disapproves of this old manufacturing process that resulted in children's death and hopes that sweets can now be enjoyed more safely. Okay, which is why he's visiting. So a clear contrast there between nostalgia of the past and the positiveness, and him looking in source B, looking at the past and how the sweets were dangerous. The other things you could talk about in perspective is the appearance and appeal of the sweets. So in source A, it's like Layla said, you know, the sweets wrappers are described in appearance, but in source B, he also describes the appearance of the girls painting the sauce. You know, they're little artists. They don't need to be perfect, but they're painted. That's a perspective on sweets, that they need to look good to appeal. The amount of sweets eaten. Do children overeat them? In source B, the girls are allowed to eat as many as they want. The acquisition and cost of sweets, the amount of sweets, the nutritional value of sweets, which doesn't seem to be mentioned at all in source A, except that once they've eaten their fill of them, they throw them. But in source B, there seems to be this mention of them being wholesome. Okay, interest in sweets, importance of sweets, sweets as a source of national pride. He says, you know, it's part of the British manufacturing process now, before they were imported. In source B, there seems to be some sort of pride national, and in source A, there's pride in the sweets personally. Okay, so some of the things you could have mentioned, the structural shift to change focus, the point of view. Source A is an adult looking back. Source B is a contemporary report written there and then. Source A builds to the climax of the star lolly, okay, but source B explores the context of sweet improvements and repeats our little ones at the beginning and end. That's what you're looking at. How does it start and how does it end? Look, it starts here with the mention of our little ones. They tasted all the sweeter to the little ones. And it ends with also this mention of our little ones. Okay, so that's part of the structure as well. The narrative perspective, both first person, but no I in source A, just we and you. But first person in source B is more obvious in the factory visit section. There's also him directly talking to the parents in source B. He says, parents, if you see this, be on the alert. Tone is completely different as well. So narrative perspective, structure, tone. Source A is funny, light-hearted, amoral, gluttonous. They're eating as much as they want. They're running around as much as they want. Source B is more serious. It's more moral. It's more informative. It's scientific language. So remember, although the topic is on sweets, the way they present the topics is different. Language. In source A, you've got metaphor, simile, exaggeration. And you've got metaphor, simile, alliteration, rhetorical questions in source B. Word choices, sensual language in source A, but more scientific in source B. Melodramatic language in source B, okay, of how dangerous it can be. You'd only need to take 3 or 4 things. If I was you, I would start off with the narrative point of view. First person, and one's in the second person, you, we. Then I would talk about the tone, and then I would talk about the language features. And the fact that sweets are a fun part of childhood in source A, but in source B, they are not a fun part of childhood because these are girls are working to make the sweets. Okay, but the tone of the overall article is more serious, reflective, moral. I did give you a little worksheet on answering question 4, and there is something that Graham has done on question 4 on Covlearn. I would really, really recommend that you spend that hour and a half looking through that video on source on question 4 in both sources as well. Paper 1 overall is easier. It is easier to answer list 4 things. It is easier to do the language question for 8 marks. It is easier to give your impressions based on what a student has said, and you get 20 marks for it. Source paper 2 is harder because it's 2 extracts. Question 1 and 3 are not so difficult. Question 3 is on language. Question 1 is true and false. Okay, but question 2 and 4 are that little bit more trickier because they're comparisons. But once you've done question 2 and you've done the quick comparisons, question 4 is where you need to spend your time. So think not just what is the same and what is different in terms of sweets, how do they show the differences? The language techniques, the layout techniques, how do they start? How do they end? What perspective are they written in? What point of view? First person, third person. All of these things count when it talks about methods, style of sentences, the humor, the seriousness. There will be massive differences, but the topic will be the same. Any question on that?
Raksana, I always mixed up with the narratives. Like, what does exactly, we did, okay, I found out that this is a first person, this is a third person, but what does it signifies?
Okay, so it wouldn't signify anything specific. It's enough for you to draw a different attitude and say, he writes in the first person because it is his personal experience. He writes in the third person because he's writing from a more objective point of view. So what I would say here for narrative perspective is in source A, it's surprising that he doesn't write in the first person, considering it's his autobiography. But by using the words you and we, he is trying to show that all children as a collective enjoyed sweets in their childhood, that they were a massive part of the childhood of all children, not just him. Whereas in source B, where you would expect a magazine article to be more neutral, and in the third person, it's actually the second half of it has a first person perspective, because it's almost as though as the writer becomes more passionate about the dangers that sweets cause, he gives a warning directly to parents.
Yeah. Okay, thank you.
We could also add in the that source A, we almost find ourselves with one of those children because it was first perspective. Is that okay? We could say that as well.
Yeah, by using the word you, it draws you in and makes you feel as if you were. And anyone who was around, not in the 1940s, I'm not being so, but in the 1980s, who has and this is when he's writing. So it's almost like he's trying to draw the reader in with the word you would remember and you would feel.
Thank you.
Okay, so very quickly then, I'm aware that it's 8:30 and I've talked to you for ages, but I've given you feedback on paper 1. Please look through these answers. I have also gone through a paper 2 question with you, and this is what it would look like. Now, next week, we are doing a paper 2 mock. Section A and section B. So again, section A would be true or false question 1, compare and contrast quickly summary question 2, question 3 on language on source A, and then question 4 comparing the structure, perhaps the narrative point of view, the tone, the language. Okay, anything that you noticed, but focusing specifically on that question with evidence. Because if you look at question 4, there's only 2 bullet points. The third one is to use quotes. Okay, you support your responses with reference to both texts, use quotes from both. So really what it's asking you is to compare the methods, the attitude, sorry, and how do you know that they're different? What methods are used to show the different attitudes, the language, the structure, the layout, even the narrative perspective, okay, the tone. So that's that. What I'm going to email you out the PowerPoint, of course. Okay, I will upload it onto Covlearn, and then I'm also going to email you this, okay, as a source of revision for the next half an hour, and you don't need to do it now. Okay, I have found these 2 clips, okay, because I'm very, very aware that we haven't done much work on leaflets and we haven't done much work on essay writing. Okay, so before we start the mock next week, I'm going to do a quick summary on leaflets and a quick summary on essays. There's never been a question on leaflet and essays since 2016. That's when these exams came into play. There hasn't been a question, but it would be just our bad luck that this year there is. Okay, there have been questions on letters, articles, and speeches. So I want to do this with you. I'm going to email this to you in the half an hour of this second of between 8:30 and 9. Okay, this is what you should be doing. You should be copying and pasting this into Google. It will open up YouTube and it will show you a quick video on leaflet writing for the GCSE and essay writing for the GCSE, so that when you come next week, you've got that in your head. Obviously, you don't need to do it now. You can do it tomorrow, you can do it the day after, as long as you watch it. Anytime you're on your phone and you've got 10 minutes. Okay, I think they're both 4 minutes long each, 5 minutes long each. Is that okay with everybody?
Yes, it is. But overall, what is essay difference with article?